Good morning. So glad to see you all this morning on this Sunday. I'm Reverend Bob Renjilian. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the minister of the Unitarian Universalists of Transylvania County, and it is so wonderful to be part of this community. Whether you're here as a fairly newcomer or someone who feels quite at home already in this place, we hope that you all find this community as one that you can lend your heart to one another. Glad that you are with us. The ushers should have been giving out, you know, your minister hates killing trees. So if there is a handout from the ushers, it must be important. Somebody said, oh, are we getting an order of service? No. No, you will not get an order of service from me unless you are an usher or a choir member. Then you get them.
Or visitor.
Oh, yes. If you're a visitor, you can get one when you sign in for your name tag. Yes. Yes, you're very special in that case. So, but no, this is different. I'll talk about it during the sermon because it's relevant to the topic today. It is the topic of the day. We have a couple of announcements. There's so many things that get flashed on the screen, but I did want to highlight a couple of things. One is next week is Super Sunday. So we would love for you to go out into the lobby in the middle of the sermon, whenever it is, you're like, I got to do this, and sign up to bring something for Super Sunday. We had a very interesting time last month in which I announced during the service, it's Super Sunday, we have enough for everyone. And one person had brought bread, and one person had brought salad, and one person had brought soup. I did not see if loaves and fishes stories occurred. So next week, being very rational Unitarian Universalists, I think we should just make sure there's enough for everyone and sign up at the main counter. The other sign up that's out there is a little further out in time, and that's the Haven Potluck on August 4th. We support the homeless shelter and programs, and so our social action team has asked us to sign up to help hold a potluck there on August 4th. So the sign-up sheet's out there. At this time, I will turn to our candles. We have several that have been turned in this morning. We will light candles of joy and sorrow. I'll start with one that I had submitted, a candle of joy for Christy Renjilian's, my wife's father, who is expected to come home from nursing and rehabilitation care this week. So it's a big joy. It's been a long time coming. I'd also like to light a candle of joy for Kevin and Tricia and everyone who made our first ever Adulting 101 camp at UUTC so educational and enjoyable for the teens. You may not know it, but I have some car care skills, and I taught them how to use a jack, change a tire, check the oil, and a few other things with that. But I was not their highlight. But it was okay. We have a candle of joy from Joan saying Vanessa Cowie is starring in a play at Conisty Falls called Where the Heart Is, and the final performance is today at 2:30, and you are all invited. So, and then Janice has a candle of sorrow for the divisions in our country and a hope that we will heal and be able to go forward with integrity and kind structure. That is so good. Thank you. And a card of sorrow that Nancy Richards has COVID and best wishes for recovery. Let's light a candle for the things that weren't shared, perhaps by those in this room or those who are online, and representing the joys and the sorrows of this community. This is how we weave our fabric of community, by knowing what is on our hearts. Now I ask that you turn to one another, greet each other warmly and with dignity and respect.
Good morning. I'm Janice Cannon, your worship associate for this morning. For our opening words, they're by Louise A. Robeck. We come to this hour knowing that it is but an hour. Yet out of all the hours in the week, this is the one that is set apart, an hour that is saved, an hour that is savored. It is a time for us to recognize what gives life meaning. It is a time to honor what we value. It's a time to celebrate our lives. Let us then celebrate, honor, and recognize that we might fully savor this hour we have saved. Come, let us worship. Our opening hymn is number 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. Please stand as you're able.
Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Thank you.
Remain seated for our chalice lighting. Today, as we move more deeply into our service, we will speak in unison for a piece by Katie Savani Gelfand. We call forth the life of our faith by igniting our chalice. This spark of new beginnings invites us into a sacred space to reflect where we have been and where we are going, even knowing that this particular flame will intentionally end with our ritual extinguishing. We fear not its end, for we know with brave hearts that from every ending of our lives we are sent forth to make a new beginning.
I'm going to be telling the story this morning. It's called The Tale of Three Villages by Reverend Rene Rahutsky. Reverend Rene Rahutsky has served as a UUA congregational life consultant since 2010. She spends half of her time expanding the UUA Congregational Life Team's Leader Lab and UU Leadership Institute. New board members can remember those resources online, and other online resources. And she also works with the Central Eastern region. She's done all sorts of other things as well, and I'll skip some of it, but I'm going to skip down to one in particular. Before being called into ministry, she was a mechanical design engineer and project manager and was awarded patent number 4963071 for one of her designs. We have a very diverse group of people who have entered ministry in a second career. So this story told by her, the tale of 3 villages. There was once 3 villagers on a roadway. Their village had been flooded. Gee, we have no clue what that's like around Transylvania County. Together they set out for higher ground to find a new home. And as they journeyed, they reminisced in stories of their former home and the loved ones that had been lost to the flood. And as they crossed over mountains, they saw a sheltered, fertile valley below with a cluster of 3 small villages. And one said, "This looks a lot like home, but I'm a little bit nervous about meeting new people." The second said, "We have become good friends. We know and trust each other, and we share tasks fairly." And the third said, "Let's go ask good questions at each village to find out if this is our new home." And over the fire, they came up with 2 questions. How does the village make decisions? And what happens when you don't agree? When they entered the first village, the villagers told them, "We have a powerful ruler who decides what's best for our village. The ruler's family has been in charge for many generations. If we have a disagreement, the ruler decides for us." Travelers looked at each other with tight lips and thanked the villagers and continued on their journey. When they entered the second village, they asked, "How does your village make decisions?" And the villagers responded, "We vote for a few people to represent all of us on a council. And we vote for people who promise to make decisions that are best for all of us." Then the travelers asked, "What happens when you don't agree with what the council decides?" And those people said, "Well, sometimes we don't all like what they decide, but we have to do it." The travelers looked at each other with disappointed eyes and then said, "Thank you, goodbye," and they went on their way. Now, one said, "That sounded good at first, and it was better than the village with the ruler." And another said, "Not really. Some people have a bigger say." And the third said, "After the others vote for them, the people on the council can do whatever they want." In the third village, they soon found some villagers to ask about decision-making there, and one of the villagers smiled and said, "Come, we will show you." And the villagers formed a large circle and invited the travelers to join with them. A villager wearing a special necklace said, "We welcome you into our circle. If you would like to stay, you must accept our agreements. They are these: speak the truth, keep your promises, and honor and care for this circle as part of earth and sky." Travelers looked at each other with shiny eyes and agreed in unison. Another villager exclaimed, "This is how we make important decisions, by listening to each other in turn under these agreements until the decision is made. This is also how we all disagree, by listening to each other in turn. Sometimes we agree to disagree, but we disagree in respect and in peace." travelers sighed and smiled widely. They had found their new home. Now, this story was originally published in Families Weave, A Tapestry of Faith, where it was accompanied by reflection questions. And perhaps you would like to ponder these questions as well. Why do you think the travelers decided to stay in the third village? What's important to the people in the third village? What values can you notice in their agreements? And what are the values that people share where you live? What rules do you go by that help you live by those values? Thanks for listening to the story this morning. Let's see, what are we up to now? Oh yeah, now is the time to give away our treasure. We do come together in this community with an agreement that we will each share our time, talent, and treasure in measure of a good, heartfelt sacrifice to one another to help keep this place running, keep this place present, keep our values here stated in this wider Transylvania County community. I'm pleased with the good that this congregation does by exercising our hearts in such a way. I'm also pleased that this month it is our own UUTC Dignity Project that is the special collection if you put donations into the special envelope instead of just in the basket itself. And the Dignity Project's based on, indeed, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Our partners in community help us assess the hygiene, personal care, and infant care items that might otherwise be unavailable to those in need, and equitably distribute these items. Your generous gift helps make all this possible. We now gratefully receive the morning offering. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Alice. Though the path these baskets took may have been circuitous. The gentle touch and the generous pieces set inside are much appreciated. For what is given in love, we receive with great joy. Thank you. Please join in this time of prayer and meditation. Spirit of love and life, we who are gathered here in the glow of these candles and this chalice, remember the love and the light shared from each of us, from each of our hearts, and from beyond ourselves in ways that transcend our own sense of ego. Spirit of love and life, this morning we lift up the hope for the future of our planet, for humanity, for this world, for the sorrow in our hearts, for the divisions in our country, and the hope that we can heal and be able to go forward. Our hearts go out as well to those who are ill, those who are recovering from illness, those who could not be with us but are in our hearts. In particular, this morning, sorrow that Nancy Richards has COVID. And we send our love and best wishes to Nancy and all who are suffering. We come with joys in which we recognize those in our community who have lent something of their skill and their time, whether in this service, in the beautiful music they bring, or the ways in which they assist and greet, or maybe as well all of those we have not even known or named who helped pull off the first ever teen camp with the Adulting 101 topics and the ability to help nurture others further along in maturity and helpfulness in their paths. For we are here, O Spirit of love and life, to make a difference for others. We rejoice as well for those who are healing. In particular this morning for Christy Renjilian's father, who has improved enough through nursing care and rehabilitation after these several weeks to finally be told he can go home, his home, with help. We are joyful for the arts, for the ability for those of us to share in the bounteous creativity that is all around us. In particular this morning, our joy is with Vanessa Cowie in her starring role in bringing forth her production Where the Heart Is. Spirit of love and life, we are touched by the ways in which the fabric of community is woven here in this place. May we pray that we continue to find the ways to weave our way into support and love of others as we go forth as well. These, the meditations of our minds and the prayers of our hearts, we hold now in the silence. In the names of all those known and unknown, remembered and forgotten, in the names of all the helpers of humankind, we say, Amen. Blessed be. John and James are here with their gift of music. Thank you.
1, 2, everybody. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's been a mean, cruel season. It's been crazy, crazy hard. And for no good reason, my universe has come apart. I've been so uneasy, and I've been trying not to burn, 'cause I know that it's kindness that we're all here to learn. And I still believe in kindness, and I still believe in love. I know the power of a gentle touch when the going gets rough. I will not be bitter, I will not be small, 'cause if I choose to harden my heart, I'm nothing at all. Ooh. Some days I don't get up, go out of my room. I'm so broken-hearted, I don't even know how to put my clothes together, to put one shoe on, to lace up those strings and open the door and carry on. But I still believe in kindness, and I still believe in love. I know the power of a gentle touch when the going gets rough. I will not be bitter, I will not be small, 'cause if I choose to harden my heart, I'm nothing at all. And I still believe in kindness, and I still believe in love. 'Cause if I choose to harden my heart, I'm nothing at all. Nothing at all.
I often try to find readings from people who do not look like me, do not sit in society in the same place as me, to bring another voice into the service. Today, this guy is more like me than most. He's from a different era, though. I'm going to do a reading from William Lawrence Sullivan, who was born in 1872 and died in 1935. And this quote is found in the Skinner House Books 2014 book, Becoming, a Spiritual Guide for Navigating Adulthood. It's kind of neat to see somebody from over a century ago thought of as being relevant to current time Unitarian Universalists. William Lawrence Sullivan was born to Irish Catholic immigrants in 1872. And for a while was ordained in the Catholic Church, and later he became a Unitarian minister, a prolific author and a literary critic, and he was published in various newspapers. His work called Letters to His Holiness Pope Pius X, which was published in 1910, was the last work by a U.S. author to have been placed on the Vatican's list of prohibited books. Here is his reading. To outgrow the past, but not extinguish it. To be progressive, but not raw. Free, but not mad. Critical, but not sterile. expectant but not deluded, to be scientific but not to live on formulas that cut us off from life, to hear amidst clamor the pure, deep tones of the Spirit, to seek the wisdom that liberates and a loyalty that consecrates, to turn both prosperity and adversity into servants of character, to master circumstances by the power of principle, and to conquer death by the splendor of loving trust. This is to attain peace. This is to pass from drear servitude into divine adoption. This is to invest the lowliest life with magnificence and to prepare it for coronation. If any of you want that sent to you, I can do that. It is one that I liked reading time and again, these aspirations that he wrote. The sermon today is because we're a unique religious movement. We're unique because we talk about how we walk together on our spiritual paths without a creed. We're centered on how we behave, how we treat others. And as of several weeks ago, end of June, we have a refreshing new way to visualize and express our values. So this Sunday's topic is our UU values. One of those who has passed on before me, the Reverend Gordon B. McKeeman, wrote that wisdom fundamentally is knowing who you are, where you are, and what you're trying to be or do. And I would like for us to then have some wisdom of knowing who we are, where we are, and what we're trying to do or be. This is where this piece of paper comes in handy. This is what the Unitarian Universalist delegates to the General Assembly voted would be a new visual representation, and inside, mine's all marked up. Gotta editorialize as I go through this sermon. Marked up inside various descriptions of each of these things: interdependence and equity and transformation and pluralism, generosity and justice, all centered on love over the image of a chalice, a flaming chalice. You can see it, the image, the graphic on the screen as well. This was a multi-year process. The villagers of Unitarian Universalism decide that we will redecide every 20 years or so or less to make sure we restate who we are, how we are, what we wish to do. And some 40 years ago, the 7 principles were set on paper by the delegates to the General Assembly through the conversations that have been held through 2 years process. And approximately 20 years in, a new process was started and a new proposal was set forth. In the beginning of this century, the delegates sat down and looked at it and studied it and looked at it again. And finally, as one minister said, "These words will never be set to song." And it was defeated in a 50-50 vote. So we kept our 7 principles for an extra 20 years. They had been approved by a nearly unanimous vote. They had served us, and we just kind of settled in with them. You know, when we lit our chalice this morning, we said, we know that this flame is temporary, that we light it and then we're going to extinguish it. But it doesn't mean that what it stands for goes out. And when we put together a hymn book or a statement of values and we say, well, that one's done, we don't think that we're done in being able to live by those values. In fact, in this congregation, we have voted the 7 principles plus an 8th one on anti-racism into our bylaws to help guide us in the way we walk. Help guide us. But I want to read a particular phrase at the very end of the instruction here for this on the back page. Mine's upside down. I didn't give you an upside down one, did I? Section C-2.5, freedom of belief. The last paragraph of this section says, congregations may establish statements of purpose, covenants, and bonds of union so long as they do not require that members adhere to a particular creed. We have freedom of religion. If a villager comes to us and says, please tell me what I need to know to be a member of your congregation, we do not hand them a sheet of paper and say, memorize these. Our minister will quiz you and check off if you have memorized each one of these. Maybe in some places where you have been before, as the author of our reading had, you would have to check off a belief in the virgin birth. You would have to check off something about the saints. You would have to check off something. And once you check off all of those things, you are therefore confirmed in that faith. It's what you believe, not how you behave. And in fact, some of you may have left such a religion because people would stand there and read their creeds on Sunday mornings, all dressed up and pretty, and then Monday go off and live their lives as if they had no values whatsoever. Unitarian Universalists are very different in that we say, we want to know our values. We want to express how we live with one another. Now, sometimes it's really easy to live with the people around you. Sometimes it's not. What was it the villagers said? Sometimes you have to agree to disagree. In that story. In the third village, well, you know, we try to come to the best decision, and some of us agree to disagree, but go on and live with one another in peace. Sometimes our society, as that candle is representing, is so stressed because everybody says, our way, our path is the only way, and we're not going to agree to disagree. We're just going to have huge fights. We're going to tell you, you have no worth. Unitarian Universalists tend to be allergic to those kinds of politics, but still susceptible to the anxiety that arises in our society because of it. I would love for us to think of ourselves as boron rods. Those of you who know anything about nuclear engineering know that in a nuclear power plant, I learned this as a kid in a field trip to a nuclear power plant, you have all these uranium pellets in long tubes, and if you want to control how much reaction you're getting, you pull a rod in and out of that pool, or a bunch of rods that are boron, and boron absorbs all those little bits of radiation that are bouncing around, and so it calms the reaction. I want you to be boron rods. Because I think, with love centered at what we're about, we could be of great value to society. But let me go on with our beliefs and not the way we would apply them, even though Gordon McKeeman would say, if you know what you want to do, that's part of wisdom. I want to talk about our brains. Our poor, worn brains, how old our brains have become, how calcified they have become. I was at a board meeting this week, not a church board, a choral society board where I serve. And we had one of the newest people coming forward and doing a presentation, which I think came out of academia from the research of Carol Dweck in 1988. So it might be old enough that our old brains can hold on to. I say tongue-in-cheek here. It was talking about the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. A growth mindset has, with effective strategies and time, people can improve their skills and aptitudes, whereas in a fixed mindset, the belief is that everyone is born with a certain skill and aptitude, or it closes off after a certain number of years. Our brain is done at a certain age, and nothing, no matter how stubborn you are, you cannot teach an old dog new tricks. Do you know of that phrase? Has anyone ever accused you of being an old dog who can't learn new tricks? It's one reason why I picked the author, Reverend Sullivan, for our reading, who had been immersed from childhood in his Irish Catholic upbringing and schooling to go into the Catholic priesthood and was a Catholic teacher. And one would think he has set his way. But he could not stay fixed in his learning, in his wisdom. When he saw challenges and obstacles, he wanted to seek out them as challenges and see them as ways to grow and solve new things, to appreciate the perspective of others and welcome candid feedback. And he found he could not do that within his tradition, so he switched over to Unitarianism. Maybe we have a whole lot of folks here who got to the point where, yes, I was taught everything I needed to know in life, and I memorized it, and I could repeat it off my lips right now, exactly what beliefs work or don't work in the world, at least according to those who taught me. And yet I am dissatisfied. Any of you ever felt dissatisfied with previous teachings in your life? I grew up UU, and I am raising my hand high. I rebelled against the religion of my childhood, which I then found was so vast that I could not be excommunicated from it. Francis David, Frank David, the preacher to the royal court of Transylvania in 1550, in the 1550s, was talking about how he had moved from Catholicism to Lutheranism to Reformed, which in this country we call Presbyterian, and then finally to Unitarianism and his beliefs. And he argued before the king why you should have freedom in religion, why you should be able to follow your conscience, why you should be able to choose your own teacher who best spoke to you, rather than have one assigned. He stood up before a monarch and said, we need freedom in this area. And the monarch said, well, I guess I'm a Unitarian, and you're all free to preach any of those messages. And you have full citizenship in my country. And in Eastern Europe, in the 1550s, that was unheard of, that an edict of toleration would be said. You've heard that story before from this pulpit, the history in our classes. What happened next to Francis David was unfortunate. After the king died, a Catholic ruler took over and said, well, the edict still holds. It was a royal edict. We can't take it away. But we can say that you cannot innovate in religion. So you cannot declare a religious principle that was not declared as tolerated in 1550. If you thought it up in 1575, you will be thrown in jail. And so, in large measure, Unitarianism became fixed in time and belief. Not entirely, because people grow and change, and even the environment they were in had. Our rules in Unitarian Universalism, saying a General Assembly every 20 years or so is going to reinvent the way we express ourselves, meant that going 40 years with the same 7 principles, or the 8th added on, didn't fit the idea of a growth mindset, didn't fit the idea that we might have learned something in 2 generations that might better apply to wisdom of how to live now. That a late 20th century formulation, even though progressive in its time, once it becomes fixed in people's minds, this is the way I can memorize it, I can say it, no longer becomes enlightening metaphor. There's a whole theology around this called metaphorical theology that I learned in theological school. And I said, this is great. That the idea that Jesus would say Abba in relation to God in a way that nobody had thought of God as a father, a loving father figure. Abba is a loving father figure. That was metaphorical. That was eye-opening. That was fresh. But centuries later, there is God the Father. There is another God. There's another God. There are 3 gods. But there are only one God, because this is so. Unitarians questioned 3 in 1, and so they were called Unitarians. Others said, this is not fresh for me. Could we think of something along the lines of Thich Nhat Hanh says, the dandelion has your smile? Well, that's radical. That just kind of jumps out at you and says, what? But maybe 100 years from now, people will say, the dandelion has your smile. And everybody will repeat, yes, the dandelion has my smile. And it will have no meaning because it has lost the power of metaphor. It has lost its freshness. It is as dead as any dandelion after a very long drought, which we never seem to get. So why am I saying this? Because I want to go through this sheet and say there's some new words here. There's some new formulations. And we didn't get 100% agreement at General Assembly. In fact, leading into the General Assembly, there was a great deal of turmoil that a change of word here or a change of word there would be ruinous to us, and we would disintegrate as a movement. We would become authoritarian. We would find ourselves no longer able to have that religious freedom we so dearly cherish. 80% of the delegates who voted for what is here, and 20% didn't. An interesting piece of this is it was very deliberately done so that interdependence is on top, and when you have the descriptions on the inside, the very first one is interdependence. It was a very different way of flipping the way we talked about things. We first talked about the individual, the inherent worth and dignity of every individual. We talked about individuals again and again. And yet, we have been drawn more and more in this century into understanding our interconnectedness and the way in which our environment needs us to think more clearly in interdependence for the health of our environment, for the health of our climate, for the health of our human relationships. Instead of focusing at first only on us, the individuals who walk into the room, can we think about our relationships and nurturing them? That is important to me, that it is first and not seventh in the way we talk about being with one another. The next one is pluralism. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We celebrate this difference in a world that very rarely phrases things that way. The other thing that I hear in here, because I know the history, is an old universalist way of stating it. I hear in here an echo of something from 100 years ago, the supreme worth of human personalities. I hear that was echoed in previous versions of principles and articles of incorporation. We are all sacred beings. It says next, we covenant to learn from another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. I'm so glad they didn't get rid of that phrase. When I grew up, it was the free and disciplined search for truth and meaning, but that's okay. Responsible is good too, not just disciplined, but responsible. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. This free and responsible search for truth and meaning has always been central in my ministry. We are always seeking. We are always in the flexible mind. We are always looking to add to our wisdom. Justice. We work to be a diverse, multicultural, beloved community where all thrive. And I wrote in the margins, not saying those people have their own groups. Where do I hear that? I hear that people of a certain skin color don't want to come to us because they have their own group. I hear that maybe people who speak a different language as their first language don't come to us because they have their own group. I will remind you that this congregation is sitting in Transylvania County, which is more than 90% white, and people with this skin color are not coming to us. And we had better be looking for other skin colors. Says your minister. We work to be a diverse community. We better. Transformation. Ooh, this is a new one. Oh, this is, if you have a fixed mind, this is a horrible one. Transformation, we adapt to the changing world. Now, it does not say we will be adjusted to the world. We are, as those with wisdom before us, was Martin Luther King one of them who said we should be maladjusted? We should be maladjusted because the world is not just. But we do need to adapt to a changing world and not keep on solving solutions, things that were there from centuries ago or early in our ways of doing things. It's said that a good minister coming in and interviewing with a congregation can figure out what problems were solved decades ago by the way in which things are phrased in your bylaws and procedures. There may be a great deal, pages, about how you deal with changing the hiring of a religious educator. And a good minister seeking a congregation will say, tell me the story of when you had to get a new religious educator and it was trauma for you. We put it in writing, and we will never have to face that trauma again. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian Universalist heritage. It is never complete, never perfect. We will find new solutions to new challenges. Generosity. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. What did I say at one point? That there was very little on certain subjects in our hymn book, in our published readings. I think generosity being lifted up here in this way is important. That we covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith. Compassion is one of those words that's important. Our faith, our presence, and our resources. Why? Why do we do that? It says our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. Oh no, they did it all over again. We get halfway through this list and they bring up interdependence again because it's important. I know, you can read this when you go home, but I'm going to go ahead and read the last one here. We declare that every person, this is under equity, every person is inherently worthy and has the right to flourish with dignity, love, and compassion. Those were changes made at the very last minute, the way this one was phrased. We have the right to flourish with dignity, love, and compassion. Wasn't in the text sent out to the congregations. Wasn't sent out before the business meeting. It was risen up from the floor of the delegates to say, we need a more poetic way. This is the poetic way we want to say this. We have the right to flourish with dignity, love, and compassion. That's quite a vision for the world. I don't mind that equity is listed last. The fact that it is here is important. And I like the next part of it. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. It is, in fact, the only way we will thrive and survive, is to be open and inclusive. Well, you can read more. You can study more. You can find out that there were many people petitioning against the adoption of any of this expression of values. So far as I can tell, the group that must be most disappointed would be Reverend Sullivan's group. Reverend Sullivan, who was troubled in the later part of his ministry of the rise of religious humanism within Unitarianism, a step away from explicitly theistic language. He wanted that language. And in the 1960s, the consolidation, merger of the Unitarians and the Universalists almost didn't happen, except for wording that came in to respect the Judeo-Christian heritage and its love that was taught. I don't see those words echoed here. And for those of you who are looking for a theistic reference, know that your diversity of theologies, where it says diversity of theologies, is still accepted here, cherished here, honored here. We want all the theologies, if we walk together in love, centered with what we're doing, to be a part of this. If any of the 20% had voted because they felt that they would not be explicitly named because of their theistic stance of a God and the love of a theology, I hope that that openness to theologies gives them the door in again. For we will be more nourished in the diversity of all who come to us. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Should you wish to argue any of these or look more at my scribbles, I'll be in coffee hour. Be glad to chat with you. We have a final hymn this morning. It is based on that center of love. It is number 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. Please rise as you're willing and able. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell a story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place. Poof. There's no flame. It's gone. It burns within. You are right, Linda. May that love be with you. May it go out and glow for others. May you be out in the world something of a boron rod, of an over-anxious and agitated place. May you be able to bring out the best in people by the values you carry out there. Thank you for being you, for you are a gift. Go forth and return again in love.